All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us this afternoon for our Dispelling Myths and Providing Tips panel discussion. My name is Rosemary Riel. I use she and her pronouns. I'm the Assistant Director for Academic Service Learning with SOURCE, which is your Community Engagement and Service Learning Center that serves the schools of public health, nursing, and medicine. I'm really pleased and grateful that our panelists agreed to come and join us today to share some of their insight and share their experiences working with and in the Baltimore communities to maybe be able to give you all some ideas about how to enter into connecting to Baltimore communities and deepening your learning here at the School of Public Health. So before we begin, oops, I'm going to make sure that here we go. Going to do a brief land acknowledgement that the Johns Hopkins University is located on the traditional and contemporary homelands of the indigenous peoples. Our campus resides on unceded lands of the Piscataway Susquehannock peoples, and we recognize their strength, resilience, and knowledge of peoples disproportionately impacted by racism, systemic oppression, including practices of redlining, colonization, genocide, state-sanctioned violence on the lives of Black and Brown folks in Baltimore. It's important for me and it's important in the school to be able to do that. So I always like to start our events this way. A little bit about SOURCE. So you all know a little bit about SOURCE, having come to our orientation, and our mission really is to develop opportunities for mutually beneficial partnerships that focus on health equity and social justice. And these are our 4 core values: reciprocity, justice, service, and collaboration. And here are 5 guiding principles that your Bloomberg School of Public Health has adopted, and how we at SOURCE build partnerships and practice service learning. Really shared vision and values, mutuality, respect, transparency, and communication, shared decision-making, and commitment. So all of these are process pieces and principles that help us in our collaboration and our partnership building. And we hope our partners and our panelists will be able to talk a little bit about how we really do that in real life. I mean, critical service learning, really, these are our 3 key pieces that we really focus on: social change, authentic relationships, and the redistribution of power. So what does that mean? It really means facilitating spaces like this to be able to value multiple knowledges and experiences. So that's in part why we have representatives from our community partners, faculty, and students to give you a snapshot of what their experiences have been like in building relationships with the Hopkins community and with the Baltimore neighborhoods and their clients that they all serve. I mean, again, all in efforts towards social change. And so all of this is a call to action. So hopefully, you've been getting those seeds have been planted since the beginning of your orientation, and we continue to water those seeds with opportunities like this. And so let's hit the ground and meet our panelists today. And so I'd like to start at the far end and move this way. And if folks can share your name, and as well as your organization, your affiliation, your role, and in what capacity, how would you describe in a couple of sentences how you've worked with the Baltimore community?
Hi, my name is Hamina Adekoya, and I've worked with 2 SOURCE organizations in the past. So one was a Baltimore Action Project I did with Intersection of Change, and they have an urban farm here in Baltimore City called Strength to Love 2. So I worked with them to help them kind of re-strategize and reform their community supported agriculture program, which was providing low-cost produce boxes and foods to residents in 21217, a city here in Baltimore City. And I've also worked with Good Harvest, and they're a community kitchen here in Baltimore City. So they supply a lot of community kitchens and food drives and just places that are serving hot meals to people who need them. So I helped them kind of recruit for their culinary program. So they were recruiting for students or just young adults in Baltimore City. And so, yeah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Allison West, and I am a faculty member here at the School of Public Health and the Department of Population, Family, and Reproductive Health. Let's see, in terms of my capacity in working with community, I work with community in two ways. One is I was a service learning faculty fellow through Source, and as part of that, developed and now teach a service learning course called Applications and Program Monitoring and Evaluation. And so every year, I've been teaching this course for 5 years now, going on the 6th. And so every year, our class works with between 2 and 4 different community-based organizations in Baltimore. And through that work, we put students in small groups, and those small groups of students work in partnership with the organizations to develop evaluation plans. And so that's a really great experience. So far, we've worked with 16 different community-based organizations over the past several years. But also, and through my research, I do conduct community engaged research focused on family and children's services. So a couple of different lenses and hats that I wear and ways that I'm involved with community.
Hi, my name is Van Ross, and I'm a community engagement coordinator with the International Rescue Committee in Baltimore. I have had the privilege of working with 3 Source scholars in the past. Most of it all been affiliated somewhat through with our youth mentor program, which is a really popular volunteer opportunity for many of the students within the MPH world. And so with the 2 of the 3 of our scholars have been really to support and to build up this program. My last scholar was looking for recruitment strategies on how to bring more Hopkins students, and so she fell in love with the program, which is great. And I think that's the purpose of what you're doing is as a student, how can you get a bigger picture, a vision of what does a community do? And so far, I think our scholars and writing, and we have a new scholar that'll be coming on this fall. We'll be working on nutrition and working with our resettlement team, and we work with humanitarian immigrants and as they begin their new life here in Baltimore.
Thank you. Perfect. So I'm Victoria Minka. I'm an MS-PH student here in my 2nd year in the Department of Health, Behavior and Society, Health Communication, Health Education. I was associated with Source through the Baltimore Community Practicum, which is the embedded program within your term 3 and 4. That 2 and 3, thank you, of your class terms here. And so I worked with the Hopkins Community Connection, which operates specifically in the location where I was at, out of the East Baltimore Medical Center, which is a federally qualified health center just down the road from here. So I was involved with the community through that role. And now through my practicum role, I also help facilitate an AAPI work group with different organizations that represent Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders in the city. So I work with multiple different organizations and community partners through that.
Thank you, Victoria. I'm Vanya Jones. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Health, Behavior and Society. I consider myself a close friend of Source while I am no longer a Source faculty fellow. I've worked with Source forever. We'll just leave it at that so we don't age me. And some of the roles that I have that I would say I want to take a beat. So I teach program planning for health behavior change. And what I want to take a step back and say,
Great class.
thank you, Victoria, is take a step back and say, when we're using this word community, and I want to say, you live in Baltimore now and you attend school in Baltimore, you're fundamentally a part of the Baltimore community, whether or not you are owning that. Every time you go out there with your Hopkins sweatshirts, and I saw some lovely ones out there, you in fact are a part of Baltimore. And so with that being said, some of the things that I've had the privilege of being able to do with some of our neighbors in Baltimore is currently serve as the co-chair of the Baltimore City Health Department's LHIC, that stands for Local Health Improvement Coalition. Maryland does not have boards of health. So I serve at the pleasure of the health commissioner on that, where we look at their initiatives that they want to do locally. I've also had the privilege of working with Source on engaging around service learning and teaching. And the last role that I will highlight is for the university. I serve as an associate director for the Urban Health Institute, where we partner with different neighbors and making sure that we're able to meet some of the needs that they want as collaborative efforts, but also figure out how do we support healthy policies in the city.
First, thank you, Source, for this awesome invitation and opportunity. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Angela Hall. I'm the Assistant Executive Director at the Franciscan Center.
We are the second largest community kitchen in Baltimore. We also service disenfranchised citizens and citizens of poverty. I'm so sorry, forgive me. We are on the front line in the trenches, helping those citizens of Baltimore who need assistance. We help with birth certificates, IDs, prescriptions, eviction prevention. We also help anyone who is truly unhoused. They can use us as a mailing address to get services. And we do a daily meal every day from 10 to 1, serving anywhere from 300 to 600 people a day. We also have dinner on Tuesday and Wednesdays, where we also are serving about 100 to 200 people a day there. I've been there for 9 years and I've worked with Source in that entire time. We get a lot of Hopkins students who come in and volunteer with us and help us improve upon things that we could better serve the community.
So thank you. I actually have one request that actually, Angela, do you mind moving to the end of the row? We're having some issues, so this is going to be recorded, and we have folks out there in our hybrid land who can't see you, and so thank you so much. Appreciate you. I'm not quite technically, I know, but I think I definitely want folks out in Zoom land to be able to see all of our panelists.
Sure.
Perfect. Thank you, Angela. I appreciate that. And then we're going to resume our, just begin our questions. And actually, I might invite Angela to continue and you've moved, but then also now folks have their eyes on you as well to be able to link the background that you've just shared at the Franciscan Center. And so based on your experience, how would you identify a key health challenge that you've noticed through your community-based collaborations and partnerships? So I know that there are many because you just described all the services that you provide, but maybe you could highlight one that you are really focusing on right now. And then how Hopkins and the Baltimore Community Partners work to address these challenges. So you mentioned the opportunities, so maybe you can dig a little bit deeper and share some memorable moments that could help bring to life the opportunities.
So our main source that we do for the community is our Healthy Meal Program. So we are now doing farm to table, and we're doing more quality food so that we could help our guests have more of a better quality of life. Because we know that food and health go hand in hand. So as we elevate how we make our meals and present them to our guests, we're helping with health conditions. We see a lot of diabetes, we see a lot of heart issues, a lot of hypertension, high blood pressure. So Hopkins has helped us formulate a better menu. They've helped us with making lists of menus of things that we get from donations, because we also have a food pantry. So they help us with nutritional factors. And so we try to make it better for the guests so that they can have a better quality of life health-wise.
Thank you. Does anyone else have some ideas about sharing a little bit about a specific health issue that you could share into an example? I think Angela mentioned a lot of how Hopkins is bringing some evidence base. So thinking about what's traditionally is pantry food items, but then also bringing in that real nutrition perspective and lens to the services that you provide. Any of our panelists speak on a specific health equity issue? Mm-hmm.
So for the IRC, the International Rescue Committee, we work with humanitarian immigrants, refugees. One of these, we work with Afghans and Ukrainians. And when they arrive here to the US, to Maryland, there's a state of culture shock. Especially we're looking at people that from Afghanistan and Ukraine, their life was just so upended so quickly. They arrive here and they're dealing with mental health issues. And so that's the one area that I know that's a great need that I think that we'll be seeing a ripple effect down the road. You know, you think that of the mother who left, she has 4 kids, but she left her 2 older kids back at home. You have just the isolation of being here. And so one of the ways that the Hopkins is, has been able to help with that one is giving me the recruitment strategies on how we can get really, with Hopkins students on how you can be mentors and to help to draw out the youth. We work with middle school and high school youth. And so that's a really a relationship building, because then you just gotta let them know that they're not alone. And I know that just for the fall, as I had said, we are starting with a nutrition program where we'll be having one of the med students come alongside and help reestablish a nutrition program that we have for our clients that are insecure. They arrive here, their food stamps may have run out, or there might be just a challenge. And it's like, number one, how do we find ways to help with our clients who are food insecure, or even how do they learn how to shop? Let's say you could have been living in a refugee camp for years and you arrive here and you go to Walmart and like, wow, look at all this stuff. And so part of what the scholar that we'll be having in the fall and the spring will help redesign a program for our interns, and which they'll be able to I guess, teach our clients on how to be resourceful in going out to the grocery stores. So.
That's great.
Yeah,
Please.
so I've also kind of worked in nutrition with the CBOs that I have gotten a chance to work with, and specifically the urban farm I worked with, we noticed that there was quite a disconnect between what farmers were growing and what was actually being sold. So what people actually had access to and just were knowledgeable about in the community. And so Hopkins gave us the opportunity to work with a professor here who was working on kind of farm to restaurant and farm to corner store initiatives. And so we were able to get Strength to Love into a program where they could kind of market their produce to corner stores and like mini markets in Baltimore City, which traditionally wouldn't have produce or just fresh greens and vegetables in their stores. So it kind of bridges that transportation gap and accessibility gap that Baltimore City residents now have access to.
Thank you. I'll move on to the second question that any of our panelists can answer is that, many students come to Baltimore with preconceived notions about our city. And what myths would you like to debunk about working with community? So, and that could come from anyone. But, especially with our new students, how have you navigated folks' sort of biases or what people have, come with as they enter their community engagement? Sure.
Yeah, so I can start out with that, especially as a student. I'm originally from Michigan, so I will start with I'm not from Baltimore. And so can you hear me? Okay, I'll speak up. Sorry. So I will speak as someone who is not from the city. And I know that the experiences of those who are from Baltimore is different from those of us who come from other places. But before I address preconceived notions, I will say I will never tell someone that they will always feel safe, especially as a cis woman, especially as a femme woman. I know that in our society, a symptom of it is often we don't feel safe. So I will not say that that's something that might not happen. What I will say, though, is when I came to Baltimore, the stories about Baltimore being particularly unsafe or particularly violent, because I think those are the notions that sometimes are spread, often are coded language for something else, and that are often not true and are told by people who don't know anything about Baltimore besides The Wire. And I would say that those are not the people you want to be talking to if you want to know what Baltimore is. So I will say that in working with community, a helpful thought that I've had is often, what is being a good neighbor? Because like Dr. Jones said, we are all part of the community now that you're here. So what does being a good neighbor mean? And also because I'm an MSPH, so we might go somewhere else after this. And so oftentimes we have to be good guests. So what does a good guest in Baltimore look like? And for me, that's often been asking questions, taking a step back, making sure that folks know they can approach me, but I'm not gonna go out of my way sometimes and try to speak out and speak like I'm the one with the knowledge in this space. But what I will say about Baltimore is it's a very loving community. And if you embrace the city and then you embrace the people here, they will embrace you back. And I've seen that from people I've met on the street, all the way to folks I've worked with in Hopkins, as well as community-based organizations. So that's how I would speak about the notions about the city.
And I think that Victoria made a good point about not being the only one in the room with all the knowledge. I think that like a myth you come in with is that we as like an academic community know more or better about the issues that the community members and organizations are facing. And I think more times than not, they know exactly what they're going through. They know exactly what tools or like resources they need to be more successful or to just reach their goals. And so I would say it's definitely been important to just walk into it with an open mind that I'm here to receive and to learn more so than I am here to just like impart knowledge or just kind of share what I know from an academic standpoint.
I think we've all heard the phrase, don't judge a book by its cover. I think that's very important when you're going into the community, because as these two lovely ladies have said, a lot of our guests are very knowledgeable, very intelligent. They're just in a bad place. And so what they need more than judgment is a smiling face, encouraging word, words of inspiration. And once you let that guard down and let someone in, you learn some of the most wonderful things about Baltimore and about their life. There are so many stories behind why people are in situations, and we just need more people to listen and help them become the better version of themselves. And when people come in and volunteer, misconceptions usually go right out the door and they become a part of the community so fast. And we need you all to become the part of the community because you all have a lot of knowledge that our guests in this Baltimore City need.
So thank you. A lot of that reciprocity and mutually beneficial piece of sort of being open-minded and open-hearted. I'm going to move on to the second question, which is linked to that question. That it's, you are each aware of the storied history between Hopkins and the community. So keeping that history in mind, how do you approach your partnership activities in order to continue down a positive path? And so I'm going to invite our faculty to speak a little bit about that, since both have, deep experiences being that bridge for the community and the university.
I can start. So I appreciate this question in part because I'm often extremely grateful at the city of Baltimore for being able to have the career that I have. I am always open that most of my work is domestic. Most of it has been here in Baltimore, and I wouldn't be able to be here as an associate professor without the city of Baltimore. Having said that, some of the things that I've learned over the course of this experience in my career and as a resident of Baltimore City, my first house I bought here in the city, is, fundamentally understanding that when people ask me what's wrong with Baltimore, because believe it or not, I get asked that question all the time. I've discovered and realized from the work that I've done here that my response is, why do you think something's wrong with Baltimore? Baltimore is right where Baltimore should be if you look at the narrative of how the city started, the policies that we have, the resources that have been invested. And the question is, if you think Baltimore needs to be different, what are you willing to do to make it different? And I have tried to work with that in my career, not judge for where we are and the struggles that I do believe cities and urban communities across the United States have. Again, I will tell you, I am biased because all of my work is domestic, but across this country, and Baltimore is one of those cities. And as we think about the work that we do here, fundamentally being open to the understanding that we get here from a narrative of history and not from a cross-sectional of time of what just happened right now. And so as you join, having an open mind of working in Baltimore or other communities, always being acutely aware that you are joining at a period in time in the history as the narrative plays out and where we are and what's happening. And so if you don't know a lot about Baltimore, there are plenty of books out there now that talk about this great city, its history in the United States, and what it means to be a Baltimorean.
Great. Well, I can maybe I'll build on that by talking a little bit about how I address it in the service learning course that I lead, and building on Vanya's really important comments. One of the things that I always do at the beginning of the course, we're very fortunate that Source has developed some modules that we are able to watch and that we watch as a class that really talk about the history of Johns Hopkins in this community in Baltimore, and also the history of research, and make space to talk about what students and what we learn as part of watching those modules. So just making sure that all the students in the course are aware of that history and kind of know and really reflect on our own identities and all of our many and multiple identities coming to this work, whether we're from the Baltimore community or, again, all of my work is domestic as well. And many of the students in our class are international and may not be as familiar and aware of history. So making sure we're all kind of in a, maybe not the same starting point, but that everyone knows, has some level of awareness of the history in Baltimore, and really making space to talk about that. But certainly doing a lot of preparation work before we interact with our community-based organizations and partners, and making sure that we're all aware and reflect on the fact that we all bring gifts and we all bring expertise, whether we are a student, whether we're faculty, whether we're a community-based organization. We also all have limitations, and really entering into the partnership with focus on listening first. Really placing a lot of value on listening, and even hearing what's not being said, making sure that we think about kind of, trying to put ourselves in the shoes of our partners and understanding kind of where they are and what the needs are. Understanding that a lot of the partners that we work with are working with clients who are dealing on crises on a daily basis, and understanding that the needs of those clients come first. Maybe not the needs of us as students and faculty, and making sure that we always come to the interactions with that awareness. But really focusing on that we all have something to teach and we all have something to learn, no matter who we are in that partnership, and always remembering that and really approaching it as a learning experience first and foremost. And I find that in my course, I mean, I have, practicing physicians and nurses and social workers and people with a lot of expertise, right? But when we enter into a relationship with community partners, understanding that our partners and the clients of those partners also come with a lot of expertise and lived experience that is equally, if not more important, and always remembering that.
Could I one more add on to that? I didn't expect her to say that, but I think it's really important. And this is something that I always stress in the class that I teach, which is anything that you go into doing work with, you bring your own bias and assumptions. And that's okay, as long as you acknowledge what they are. Part of the process that you're doing right now in going back to school is acknowledging that everything we do, from our foundation of biostats and what we do, we're doing it with an assumption. Behavior theory, there are assumptions. If you violate those assumptions, you usually wind up doing the wrong thing. The same is true from working with people that are unlike you or in new communities. So to add on to the point, which is we walk in with assumptions and biases and the things that we bring from our narrative of history too. That's not bad. Just acknowledge them and find a way of how you're realizing how they either fit with what you're learning and doing, or that you are in fact making a biased judgment about a group of people that you need to examine where that came from and why.
If I may also add on to that, I think we talk about the history between Hopkins and the community in the past tense, like it's not something that continues to have real repercussions. And so being aware that as you work with community organizations, that the past is not the past is the present, and that it's something that people live with every single day. So balancing that, and it's not something that happened 50 years ago and we can ignore it now, but it's something that people feel in real time, and how to keep that in mind as you go into partnerships. And I would also say that as someone who's maybe new to partnerships in Baltimore, as I imagine many of you are, having trusted folks from community organizations or mentors who will say, hey, you made a good attempt. Maybe that wasn't the best way to do it. Or to make sure that when you are not being as self-critical as you should be, maybe, that they will also step in and allow you to have that space to grow and to be better. So also looking for those folks to hold you accountable. It was helpful.
Yeah. think what we've heard a lot is a lot of care and accountability, and how can we grow into that? We've heard a little bit about professional humility and cultural humility. Again, not being from Baltimore, but also just trying to be aware of the identities and the privileges, sort of your own positionality as you enter the work that you do in the classroom, conversations in the classroom, and conversations with our partners. And also, we're here, again, sources here, our partners are here to really help situate you and have some conversations that might, I think entering in with some genuine curiosity that you don't know what you don't know, and that's okay. Sometimes there's a lot of, we've come to this space and we're expert, and we can be expert in the things we are, but then also, again, just staying curious and generous with your time. A lot of the things that we've talked about here about how do we bring that history, we're still in that timepiece. We're still continuing on trying to remedy and repair some of the things that didn't have to do with us as an individual, but still may impact your outcomes and that you're all trying to address in our health equity issues. Again, I'll move on to another question. And again, any of our panelists are welcome to answer is that, what tips would you like to share with our students, especially those who are new, who are interested in getting involved in the community? So you've all mentioned kind of broadly kind of how they can enter. Are there any specific tips or opportunities that that we haven't mentioned yet? Or, yeah.
I like to say, find your passion, whatever you're passionate about. Trust me, there's a nonprofit that works in your passion. So figure out what you're passionate about and then find that nonprofit and work with them and just help them to become a better nonprofit and can broaden their reach and help more people. Don't let fear hold you back. To be the change that we're looking for, we have to do. So
I would say try just immersing yourself in the culture here, especially if you are living in Baltimore City, like connecting with the community organizations and places that are doing things, but also just finding places or spaces where you can kind of engage in the culture and the community in more recreational or just fun ways. So I feel like some of the most kind of impactful or conversations that have resonated are just places where I least expected them. And so while I am here in Baltimore City, just trying to experience as much as I can and just being present and here, it means a lot.
I would say to have multiple experiences that are outside of your comfort zone. I think of just me personally, working with some volunteers, it's like, oh, it's very uncomfortable. But then working with a student that does not speak English. But it's like, once you kind of get past that initial, I have no idea what I'm doing. That you grow so much. And I always like to say, look for just multiple opportunities that you can grow your experience. Because, this is a time that you have that ability to really expand your understanding of different community-based organizations. So, work past your fear and just do it.
I will, one thing I didn't in my introduction was start by saying, I am an alumna of this school. My PhD is from here. And so I'm going to actually put that hat on for a second and take off my faculty member hat, even though I know it's fun here. So something that a lot of folks who know me personally know about me is that I salsa dance, and I learned how to salsa dance sitting in those seats. Wednesday nights, I would go to a salsa club, take lessons, go back and finish studying. And I give you that example to say, Baltimore then became my home and looked way different to me than it did sitting in those seats and thinking about it as a place where, I do my research. It became a place where I made friends. It became to the point of making friends who are educators. I made a lot of friends in that sphere who were teachers. It helped me want to do work with schools here in Baltimore and understand fundamentally their challenges. So as an alumni, I will say, step into that space where you get to see Baltimore as home, and you'll start to see it from a different perspective. I also want to shout out that one of our panelists may have shared that this is stepping out of their comfort zone. So I think we should be very thankful that we would have people who are willing to come step out of their comfort zone as they're asking you to engage with community here in Baltimore and our neighbors by stepping out of your comfort zone. So I think there are people here who are role modeling that for us today.
Awesome. We have about 20 minutes. I want to toss the questions out to our audience here. If anyone has any questions, to feel free to stand up, and then I'll repeat them into the mic. And then I'm also, if there are folks out in viewing this, no one's viewing this at the moment. But just, yeah, if you have any questions, and if folks who are viewing this later have questions, always you can email source@jhu.edu with questions. But yeah, where is any of the tips and stories that folks have shared today landing with our audience today? Any comments, questions, feedback? Yes, please. In the far back, go ahead.
So do you mind if I ask 2 questions? Or,
Not at all. You can go ahead.
so, one was, specifically actually about the, Franciscan Center and the Hills. I was actually gonna email you, but since you're here, I figured I'd ask if, I was considering kind of trying to bring out a small group or something to volunteer. But I was wondering, that could overshadow, or, if there were too many volunteers. So I was wondering, and this could extend to group volunteering for anything, how to kind of coordinate that without having it, a Johns Hopkins MPH event versus people just volunteering.
So I'm just going to repeat the question. The question was, how do we, if we're interested in organizing a group with a Franciscan Center, what's the best way to do that to not overshadow individual opportunities, et cetera?
So we do offer group opportunities. You definitely would just have to email me. I would have to check the schedule and see where I can better fit the group. And then we go from there, and you guys will come in and just have an awesome experience with us.
Yeah. Did you have a second question?
Yeah, my second question was more broad. Since most of us will be here for a year, I've heard comments on you can get really involved with the community, but sometimes you can also cause a lot of damage by, being there, being incredibly present, and then leaving. And so I was curious how you would recommend getting involved within, the greater Baltimore community without causing that damage of just kind of getting.
So great question. The question is how can I get involved, or how can Hopkins students get involved and be able to avoid being disruptive and overbearing and creating damage, again, being aware of the history. How? And only being here for 11 months.
That time.
And so being sensitive to the time constraint of, dropping in, then dropping out, how to, if you don't mind, think about sustainability in any of the endeavors that you wish to engage with partners.
I can speak from the student perspective, and then I'd invite a community partner to also kind of offer your thoughts on this, but be as transparent as possible. Let them know from the jump that you are not going to be there for like 5 years to the rest of your life, because that's misleading. I think saying, hey, I'm here for 11 months, but you have me for this time, and I'm happy to do what you need me to do. I think going into it with that mindset and then letting the actual organization or the folks tell you how they want you to show up is probably the most respectful way that I would approach it. I would also say, maybe I don't need to tell you this, but I'm thinking critically about whether to take leadership positions, whether to start a new project. And I would encourage you to take some of the classes taught by the great professors here, but they all talk about sustainability of programs and sustainability of different sort of especially academic folks kind of entering into spaces, and think about what sustainability would look like if you were to, let's say, volunteer with an organization, set up a whole program, and then leave. Does it outlast you, or is it about you? So that is how I would approach it as a student.
Yeah, I would say honestly the same, like when you are creating something new or coming in with these just great, but maybe lengthy ideas, just thinking of what you can do in the moment to best serve the organization's needs today and now and in the next month. And of course, still working or giving time to the bigger ideas, because at the end of the day, those are just as important as the smaller, more tangible, or just more measurable goals, but also really devoting time and energy and effort to the things that they need now and today and tomorrow, and kind of helping them meet their more immediate goals, because the longer goals are more important to us. But like you guys are aware of, you'll leave in months to less than a year. And so it's important that you leave them with something that they can use in your absence, something that kind of outlives you.
So definitely, for us, we have long-term, short-term, individual, group, all types of opportunities. So, and we also know that, students are going to come and go. So like she just said, just be present. We have day-to-day, assignments and things that we need completed. So just trust that we know what we need, ask, how can I help? And we can show you.
That, what, could I?
Yeah, please.
So one thing that I will say, and I think they have been very thoughtful and very positive in their answers. I'm gonna take this a little different direction. And the direction is, if you commit to a group, commit to that group. You're here for a reason. As a faculty member, I am here to invest in that reason. I want very strong, trained MPH students coming out of the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. So if you decide you want to volunteer somewhere, and you think very clearly about being able to show up, because what's going to happen is we have 8-week classes, in case y'all haven't figured that one out. And about, I don't know, 6 weeks in, you're going to realize the volume of work you have to do to finish those last 2 weeks. And it happens over and over and over again. And what happens is you realize the primary reason you're here is venturing into what you want to do for this group. Be honest, look at your schedule, try and be able to commit the time you say you can commit, because that's where Dr. West and I then have to pick up the remainder issue, and the damage that you're talking about. That's when it happens. It's when we realize we're not going to be able to deliver in a way that we promised, because we didn't have that honest conversation of, you're here for a reason, for a time period. So have those conversations when you're ready to commit, and be mindful that they are real. And when your conflicts come up, they will come up. I'm here to tell you that. We figure out a way to get around it, so we don't leave people off in worse situations or make more broken promises that we've done in the past.
I would also just say, when you're looking for an opportunity, look for something that has a start and stop date that's manageable. I know, like for us, I'm not gonna beat the drum again, but like my mentor program, it's 10 weeks. It's for 2 hours a week, period. That's why I get so many Hopkins students. Half of our volunteers are Hopkins students, because it's measurable, it's simple. And so as you go look for different opportunities, it's very helpful if you know in advance, you know, that this is a 12-week program, a 10-week program, or whatever, and that you know that you can commit to the amount of hours, the 2 hours per week, versus they're looking for 15 hours. That's a lot. So I think that's important. Just be going with realistic expectations of what your schedule can permit.
Can I just add one more thing?
They're like, and another thing, people, that's another thing.
I know, just to build on all of these comments, this is a challenging program. It goes quickly. It is very challenging, and we don't want you to get behind in your studies. If you can only give an hour, that's okay. And I've lived in this community for over 25 years, and my family volunteers a lot. There are plenty of organizations here that are happy to have you once a month for an hour. I mean, if you want to, go to Share Baby Diaper Pantry, one time, that's okay. If you want to make, help make breakfast at Nana House one time, that is okay. There are so many organizations here that are happy to have you once a week, once a month, once a quarter. So again, don't let time be a barrier if you want to be involved. There are an array of opportunities here with different time commitments. So there's something for everybody if you want to be part of this community and be involved.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes. Mhm.
Can't let you know this, but is there one place where there's a list of all the service learning classes, or is it more just as you're going? Oh, there is.
Mindy, do you?
Yes, there is a list.
Yeah, right.
Coming up in the practical information session.
It's
Okay.
August 8th in the,
Okay.
so the practical information session will have that list.
you.
Yeah, absolutely. Other questions? Yep, please.
If a Hopkins student wants to volunteer, it's for say for 1 hour a month or whatever time you can commit, but has someone outside JHU that wants to do that volunteering opportunity with them, do you have recommendations for that? So for instance, if my husband wanted to come with me for one of the volunteering opportunities, is that allowed?
Okay, so the question is, if, as a Hopkins student, I want to meet one of the volunteer requests, opportunities that I see that comes across the Scoop or comes across Hopkins Engage, can I bring someone who is a non-affiliated from Hopkins? And I would say yes. But just make sure that we are the communication way. So our partners come to us for the sustainability and to be able to promote. And if there's room and space for your partner, for friends who want to volunteer with you, I would say yes. And just give, respond in kind to whatever the request is. But there's no limitations, I think, depending on if they're only looking for 5 people and they're already filled, then maybe look for the next opportunity. But I would say, yes, welcome folks to join you as well. Volunteering together is much more fun. Any other questions, burning questions? Any other hands? Yes. Sure.
Really want to be involved. One more about how to help the sustainable community partnerships. And I just want to express my gratitude to you all for making the time to come and talk to us and give us tips, on how to do it. I like what you say about don't be afraid, find something you're passionate about and go for it. So I just want to thank you for being here.
Yeah. Oh, yes, another hand, please.
So mine's more of a logistical question, I guess. If we want to volunteer, Source is kind of like the platform or helps connect students to organizations, and do we contact organizations directly or go through Source?
So this is what I would say. So if you're responding to something that you see in our scoop, in our weekly scoop, it usually has specific directions like reach out to the Franciscan Center and we'll have a contact. If you look at our partner interactive partner map that Source has of all of our partners, and you see an organization, but you haven't seen an opportunity come up in one of our newsletters, reach out, email source@jhu.edu, and we'll get to know you, your interest areas. Our partners really come to us to help to connect. It would be better for us to connect you with those partners, just since we are in active contact, all of our full-time staff are liaisons, so are in touch with our partners there to know what their priorities are. If you do there's nothing preventing you from doing kind of a cold contact to one of our partners, but I would discourage that. You would probably have a better opportunity to get connected with someone in the organization, kind of connecting with us first. They may be more responsive as a Source partner, and to one of us from the staff than necessarily a cold.
Can I add
Sure,
on to that?
please.
And I'm going to add on to that in a way that, so if you're doing it on behalf of your student experience here at Hopkins, please go through Source. Please help us sort of curate that experience and know that, again, some of the things that we've talked about around commitment, time, and issue. That's not to say you can't go and volunteer in Baltimore in other ways that you want to do now as a faculty member, where it sometimes shows up where it gets really awkward to say you go work with this really great organization that you have a great time with and you think is wonderful, and then you want to do it for your capstone experience, right? And there's not been this discussion around expectation or work, and that's where I think part of the challenge sometimes can arise is you can go out and volunteer with who you want to volunteer with, but if you want to use it as part of your academic experience here, just know that if you do that outside of sort of the Source and the other supports that we have here, it might not work. And it might get really complicated really fast because of our expectations and our requirements that they might not know about.
Yeah. And I would say, just one last thing, Source has a lot of resources. There's a do's and don'ts resource that really echo a lot of what our partners have said today, that I'll share, and then it will be posted for you, that, are really ways, we all want you to be successful in your collaborations and thinking about how to build partnerships. And so, good luck to everyone. And again, if you have follow-up questions, one last question, we'll take it. Just because I have a little bit more time, please. Mhm.
Yeah, so I heard about the source scholar, source service scholar, so I wonder that what are the difference between being volunteer and being source service scholar, and what are the skill or particular cultural expectation that you need for this?
So the Source Service Scholar is a specific program, and right now we are not accepting any applications. We're in the process right now, but the Baltimore Action Projects, and actually this is a good bridge to some of our other opportunities that are coming up. You can see it there and there we go. Some of our other opportunities that are coming up. There we go. Let's share it here. Yep, you got it. So thank you all for listening. And two things that are going on right now. Today, we've just kicked off our Source School Supply Drive. So for the next 2 weeks, we'll be collecting school supplies for our partners. And so new and unopened supplies, please look for the bins. Drop-off locations are listed there. And to speak to the question that the individual asked about the Source Service Scholar. So the Source office has a lot of different programs that are specific long-term programs. Source Service Scholars, again, now closed, but the Baltimore Action Projects, we are accepting applications. Online info session was last Thursday. Believe it was recorded. And so if you're interested in learning a little bit more about that, but missed that opportunity, applications are due August 2nd. So similarly, they'll have a certain number of projects that you can apply to. That's a long-term commitment throughout the course of the academic year. So skills and knowledge and abilities, they'll have to look at the project specifically. And you're really applying to specific projects. So you will identify the projects that you want to apply to. Other opportunities, short-term opportunities, connections, community consultants coming up in the fall, as well as applying to the Baltimore Community Practicum class, which opens up the first day of the term. So there's a lot of opportunities with our programs. One last opportunity that's coming up is Source has our governing board, students serve on our student governing board. So you can please apply, think about applying. If you like our process, if you like what we do and want to support us, that's coming up. That application is due August 6th. And if you're looking for an opportunity to be a federal work study student, we will have program assistant opportunities. So you can come and work directly with our staff, again, to support this opportunity, support the opportunity. So let's give a round of applause to our panelists. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. And I'll pass it back over.
Yes, thank you so very much to all of you who are here and to all of our panelists. It was just fantastic. So lots of resources for everyone. Yeah, thank you.
I know, right?